Great. Get these. I'm going to mute myself. I'll be right back. Let you know once you've come up in a minute.
Hello, I'm Russell McGee, the festival director of the 2021 Here Now Festival, and thank you for joining us this morning. We have a very special panel today from the standpoint that we have two of the audio drama finalists from the Audies, and actually the winner here this morning, coming in from the UK, and I've been able to work with, I think, actually all of these people indirectly at some point over the last 7 years that I've worked at Big Finish. But this is the first time that we're all getting to actually speak one-on-one, face-to-face, which is fantastic. Let me just take a second to also thank our sponsors. Want to thank Whisper Room, Sennheiser, SAG-AFTRA, Podium Audio, Sound Booth Theater, and the Bloomington Writers Guild, and Earplay. And I think I've got everybody there. And if I didn't, I apologize. But thank you to all our sponsors for making this possible this year. It is amazing given we're doing all of this virtually. And with that, I would like to take a moment and just have our guests introduce themselves. Helen, would you start off?
Hi everyone, I'm Helen Goldwyn and I am a producer with Big Finish Productions, and I am the producer of At a Girl 2, which was a finalist in the Audie Awards this year.
And then Ken?
Hi everybody, my name's Ken Bentley. I'm probably best known for directing 1 or 2 audio plays for Big Finish Productions over the last few years. 1 or 2, just a small number, yeah. Thank you.
And then Benji?
Hello, I'm Benji Clifford. I'm a sound designer. I've done a lot of work for Big Finish Productions over the years, and I was the sound designer on Stranded 1 and 2, but this is all about Stranded 1. You can also find me on the Big Finish podcast as well.
And then last but not least, Jamie Robertson.
Hello everyone, Jamie Robertson here, music and sound designer for Big Finish, and I was the music composer for Stranded and Stranded 2, but obviously this is Stranded 1 like Benji said, and I'll work with Benji a lot.
All right, and Helen, before we dive into Add a Girl 2, I do want to play the trailer just so that people get a sense of what we're talking about here. So let me pull up that so I can share it with the public. Give me 2 ticks. You know, juggling between multiple screens, as you do in the pandemic. And pull up the trailer. Let's see. Here we go.
From Big Finish Productions, an original drama, At a Girl.
I fell from the sky today! You can't scare me anymore!
Commander,
David, what's wrong?
a Luftwaffe attack force is heading for the airfield. A big one.
Oh, Lord.
We don't have long to prepare.
Officer King, bring the ATA pilots here, please, as quickly as possible.
And you accuse me of heartlessness? This is no time for photographs.
Well, that's where you're wrong. This is exactly what the papers want, what history needs.
Ha! That got you off my back! No! Oh no! Think, Dennis, spinning, falling. Bail out! She'll be back soon. We'll get you mended.
Mum!
Of course you do. Look at you. You're changing lives. We're all here doing this incredible job because of you.
Yes, and isn't it wonderful you had to jump out of an airplane whilst being shot at?
Well, that wasn't ideal.
You think you can fix this? You can't repair something like this. It's all broken. You think these people will recover from this? From seeing their friends blown up? I'm afraid I have some very bad news, Officer Lloyd.
What? Oh no.
I was terribly fond of her. We all were.
The forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The flags of freedom fly all over Europe. I pray that peace be now restored to the world, and that God will preserve it always.
Big Finish. We love stories.
All right, Helen. Yes. What can you tell us about Add a Girl, and specifically Add a Girl 2?
Well, gosh, there's a lot to tell, but well, first and foremost, it was an idea originally that came from Louise Jameson, who is not only a regular actress and director and writer at Big Finish, but also a very dear friend and colleague and collaborator of mine. So I was persuaded to produce. It was the first thing I'd ever produced, and I didn't really understand what the role was. And David Richardson, the executive producer, and Louise coaxed me on as producer and co-writer. And David actually said to me, "Oh, it won't take up much of your time," which was a downright lie, because it was so much research. I mean, I was so pedantic about it being historically accurate, as much as one can within a fictionalized version of a historical kind of true story. And so obviously At a Girl 1 was a mammoth task. And then Big Finish came back to us and said, can we do a sequel? And we thought, well, yes, we'll do a standalone episode, and then the final episode will tie up all the loose ends from series 1 as well as series 2. So it had a lovely kind of full circle feeling to it. And yes, months of research for me and the writers, and I would say all of us had an absolute commitment to making it as authentic and as sort of heroic as we could to honor the real life women that are the inspiration for the story. I felt a great responsibility in that, and I really wanted them to be shown as flawed and human, but heroic and courageous.
That's actually something that came up in another panel this weekend that I was hoping you might get into, which is just promoting and creating opportunities as far as diversity in audio production. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, obviously, this was conspicuous for being an all-female creative team, all female writers, female producer, female director, and predominantly female cast. And there was quite a lot of discussion around that online when it was announced, and we announced the release on International Women's Day. And I felt quite irritated because what we're working towards is a moment in time where it's not a conspicuous thing. Because think of the creative teams where it's been all men and the cast has been predominantly men, and nobody's ever said, oh, it's an all male production. It's, you know, it's no big deal, it's an all female production. But yes, it still feels like a big deal because it is a rarity. Less so nowadays. But yeah, we wanted to create amazing, well-rounded characters for a vast array of women in this series, and to not make their journeys revolve around a relationship with a man, or indeed any kind of romantic relationship, just to have them live their journeys and that demonstrate that full female experience of life. And I suppose it's easier coming from women, but of course men can write that. There's nothing to say that men can't, and I can write about the male experience. But yeah, it was a very distinctive energy to have an all-female team.
And this is also one of the original productions that Big Finish has branched off and created. Can you also talk about that?
Well, yes, I believe Atagirl was the first Big Finish original. And again, that felt like quite a big responsibility, particularly for a first-time producer who was learning the ropes. But also, what an amazing opportunity for all of us involved in the original series to basically work for a company that has come to us and said, write what you want. Right, here's the kind of brief context of it, but basically go and write what you want, and we trust you to come up with something amazing. But unlike TV, we didn't have lots of fingers dabbling in what we were creating. We were totally trusted, and that is a really unusual environment to be in. I believe it's quite unprecedented. I don't think there are many companies that operate like that, where you don't have kind of more interference from executive producers. So yeah, it was such an opportunity for me as a creative, because not only did I produce it, I co-wrote it, and I'm in it. So I didn't write the theme tune, but I would have if they'd let me.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love the fact that Big Finish is more of like a mom and pop type of business. And Nick has talked about that even at conventions and everything, and just that it does have that smaller feel, and we are a community, and just the way we all are able to work together, and it gives us a lot more opportunities, I personally think, as far as how we're able to work together collaboratively. And it's just, it's a very nurturing environment, and I feel privileged in that respect to be part of that world. Helen, can you also maybe talk about how, like, because I know you also write quite a bit for Big Finish. Can you also talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I came in as an actor to Big Finish. I worked with Big Finish for nearly 20 years as an actor before I emailed them and said, oh, well, I have done directing and I do write. And then suddenly everything exploded, and they forced me, really. I think the first one I really wrote in modern times was Torchwood. I had written a couple over the years, but Torchwood Escape Room was one that I wrote, and I totally lost my nerve. I had massive imposter syndrome, emailed people and said, how do you write a story? I don't know how to plot a storyline. I just lost all my confidence in my instinct, but they nurtured it and boosted me and gave me input with, editors John Dorney and Scott Hancock were amazing. And I've been allowed the opportunity to learn on the job. And only now, after about 5 years of doing it, I did a 20,000 word, a 2-hour Doctor Who recently. And I thought, oh, I've got it now. I've got the hang of it now. I'm not phoning people up in tears saying, I don't know how to do it. I mean, obviously you do know how to do it, but you're surrounded by such greatness and people that can just rustle up a script in a week. Ken Bentley probably amongst them, and Joe Lidster, incredibly prolific writers who can just do it instantly. And that's not me at all. It's a painful process for me, but wonderful.
And you mentioned this about the fact that you painstakingly researched and made sure there was the accuracy, and that's something I can relate to as a writer, because again, with what we did with Ernie Pyle, we made sure we had that historic accuracy. But can you talk about that process for you as a writer and what you do whenever, because Doctor Who is all over the place, as far as the different historical places that we visit. Can you talk about that? How do you dive in and figure out the world for yourself?
I think you just have to read as much as you can, as much as you have time for. And I suppose I've done a lot of work where you absorb things by osmosis. You kind of get the nugget of it, the kernel of it, and then you can expand upon it. But certainly with Atagirl, I read 2 big books on, that era. And I also had a Bible kind of book of diaries that people had kept during that era. So even when it came to mentioning food types, I would look it up in the diary and think, well, what were they eating on January the 3rd, 1943? And that stuff is very satisfying for me, and also very agitating if I think I'm getting it wrong. So, for example, we had an air raid in Atagirl 1. We wanted and needed an air raid over the headquarters of the Air Transport Auxiliary, and I knew that in that point in the war there wouldn't have been any more major air raids from the Luftwaffe. So I just couldn't. Everyone kept saying, "Oh, artistic license." Like, no, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't have happened. So I couldn't let it go through. So it's stuff like that that kind of liberates you in some ways and inhibits you in others.
Helen, I thank you, and please feel free to chime in as we keep going. And I'd say that to all of our guests here. If there's a point that I bring up and you feel like you have something you want to add, please don't hesitate. Let me.
Since you've said, Russell, I'll just say, Helen, it's painful for everybody, and anybody who says it isn't painful is either lying or they're not doing it properly.
That is a relief. That's a relief. Thanks, Ken. It's not just me being stupid.
And Ken, I would like to play the trailer for Doctor Who Stranded 1 now, so that our audience, again, has a frame of reference. So give me a second.
It'd be useful for me to be reminded too.
I feel you there, as many of the productions as we go through, because
I forget what I did last week.
And here we go. Actually, that's not what I want to have play. Got Jamie's wonderful music playing there, but that's not what we need at the moment. Stand by. Here we go.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, The Eighth Doctor Adventures, Stranded, Volume 1.
She used every ounce of her strength to escape the Crucible. No control, no navigation. Instinct brought her to her second home, Earth. Then she gave up the ghost.
You're saying you own a house?
Oh, this place!
Isn't this Baker Street? Expensive area.
Number 107. I made the investment a long time ago.
Hello? Can I help you?
Yes. What are you doing in my house?
The past few days, everyone's becoming more paranoid that there could be someone or something else in the house.
The idea of spending the rest of my life here.
There are worse places to live than planet Earth.
The TARDIS isn't responding at all.
Well, we knew it'd be difficult.
I really think I might not get her back.
Dr. Liv's been shot!
I thought it was safe here, but we've lived our lives so dangerously for so long that we've forgotten death lurks everywhere. Driving a car, walking the street, working in a shop.
A police box on Cameron Road. I'm old enough to remember what this was really used for.
Big Finish. We love stories.
But if we're going to be stuck here a while, we might as well give the walls a lick of paint.
I'm a Time Lord. I don't do up kitchens.
All right. Ken, what can you tell us about Doctor Who Stranded 1?
Well, I can tell you that when we came up with it, we had absolutely no idea we were all going to be stranded.
I was actually going to ask you about that, if there was a tie-in or no.
I'd like to say we all had the gift of foresight and we're that on the ball at Big Finish, but we're really not. It was just a complete coincidence. It was a very conscious decision to do something different. We're quite lucky with the Eighth Doctor range in that we get this quite expansive sort of 16 hours of story to tell each time we do a series. But what we try to do each time is something very different. And it was a very conscious effort to do something very different in terms of Doctor Who storytelling, which we do a lot of. But it was also a very conscious decision to create a very inclusive story, and a story that gave us the opportunity to represent a lot of people.
You've also worked for a while at Big Finish. Do you have any standout productions that like have just stuck with you that you're like, oh, this, was brilliant, and it was just something that you're very proud of? Obviously, this is, I'm sure, one because of the win here, but just curious.
But for sort of it's a constantly changing list, to be honest with you. We're very fortunate to produce as much as we do as a company and as individuals. If you'd told me when I first decided to get into this business that I'd be directing as many plays a year as I get to direct at Big Finish, I would have told you were lying to me. There's just no way that would be possible. So it's we're very fortunate to create as much as we do and to work on as much as we do. And therefore, to be honest with you, everything that my sort of top five is constantly changing because we have the opportunity to work on something else incredibly exciting. I know we're here to talk about Stranded and Doctor Who, but we've Benji, Jamie, and I have just finished work on the latest Sherlock Holmes box set, for example, which has leapt to the top of my list of personal favorites at the moment, purely because it was recorded in quite difficult circumstances. These home recordings aren't easy. They are technically quite complex. They come with a unique set of challenges that we're all trying to overcome. But absolutely, the work from everybody on that production has just been top drawer. And I rarely do this just because we're all so busy working. We finish one project and move on to the next. But made sure I emailed everybody who'd worked on that one to let them know that it's rarely. I've normally listened to a production so many times during the course of working on it that by the time it's released, it's unlikely I'm going to listen to it again because my job is listening to plays. So I very rarely sit down to listen to one for pleasure. But that Sherlock Holmes box set is one that I'm definitely going to sit down and listen to again. It's such immaculate work. But Benji's sound design is so detailed. Jamie's score responds so beautifully to or preempts so beautifully everything that's happening in the story and needs to be triggered. But Jonathan's scripts just fantastic. And we've done a few Sherlock Holmes, so to be perfectly honest with you, by now we should be able to get it right. But that's for me. It's just a constantly changing top five. I want to talk about Survivors too. I can't. We've got too many other things to talk about. But yeah, there have been over the years some really great work that I've had the privilege to work on with others.
And what do you think makes Doctor Who Stranded set itself above all the rest as far as like with garnering this award? What qualities did you bring to the table in the production that put it there?
Well, okay. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Two slightly different aspects there. I think really, if I'm honest, it won the award because it really did tap into a moment. And that was completely by chance. The fact that David actually came up with the idea, David Richardson, the producer, when we all first sat down and talked about where we wanted to take the next series, threw in this idea, this sort of lockdown idea, for want of a better way of describing it, which we all thought was great, and so that's what we ran with. But it was completely by chance that tapped into a moment in time the way it has, and I think really it was that with the opportunity to write so many very inclusive roles, I think that makes it a very much a product, an exciting product of its time that I think listeners have really tapped into.
And you have worked both as a writer and as a director, and again, trying to make sure we get the gamut here, because we have Helen as a writer and you as a director. Can you talk about directing for Big Finish, and specifically, obviously, on this production, but then Ken, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I also know from having talked to David about this from when we worked on the Seventh Doctor story, that Doctor Who wasn't your world, so to speak, in that you came more from the drama side of things. Can you talk about that and how that's, how you've had to learn and deal with that as you've worked on so many productions at this point?
Yeah, I guess like a lot of people in this business, my background's theatre. A lot of people have got into audio. Audio's exploded massively in the last few years. It's a huge business now. It wasn't 20 years ago, 25 years ago. But even then, people our sort of basic training in this industry is normally theatrical. And then people go into TV, film, or in this case, audio. So theatre had been my background, and I'd worked with Nick Briggs on a Sherlock Holmes play, funnily enough, which is how that sort of thread happened at Big Finish eventually. But when he took over as executive producer at Big Finish, one of the first things he did was bring many more people in to work at Big Finish. And he phoned me up out of the blue and said, "Do you fancy directing some audio?" So I said, "I've never directed any audio before. Are you sure I'm the right person for the job?" And in typical Nick Briggs fashion, he said, "Well, I wouldn't have asked you if I didn't think you were the right person for the job." So here we are, just over 10 years later, and now the vast majority of my work at the moment is audio and audio for Big Finish. It's in terms of not knowing anything about Doctor Who. I had that conversation. I've had that. I constantly have that conversation. I'm very honest with people about that. But it's not. Those aren't. There are some people at there are many people at Big Finish who are Doctor Who fans and who have an encyclopedic knowledge of Doctor Who, and rightly so, because the company needs an encyclopedic knowledge of Doctor Who to do what it does. But it also needs other skills, and that's where people like myself come in. I'm a how can I sum up directing? It's story wrangling and actor wrangling. And I'm a story wrangler and an actor wrangler, and it doesn't matter what the story is. If you live and breathe story, if that's your job to wrangle story, then you know what needs doing to wrangle it, and it doesn't matter what the story world is. Obviously, I've learned a lot about Doctor Who along the way, so I'm picking up a lot. I'm sort of feeding that knowledge in as well now as I go. But I'm the first person when I'm working on something to turn to another person in the room and say, is this a continuity reference? Do I need to double check this? Are we saying this correctly? Can we do this? So it's we all have and bring to the table very individual skills, but it's also a completely collaborative process.
Fantastic. And you brought up, actually, we spoke about it last night. Can you talk about what it has been like working during the pandemic and adapting and having to work with actors at a distance?
Yeah, there are the obvious additional technical challenges by connecting online. First of all, everybody's been absolutely fantastic. They've been so keen just to work and to be able to work and to keep on. And we're very fortunate to do the job we do. I mean, I've done other jobs in my time, some of which I would be happy to talk publicly about, others not so much. You might be quite shocked. I'm very lucky to earn a living doing this, and we all are. And therefore, there was a great sense of excitement and relief from everybody during the early stages of lockdown last summer to be able to come online and realize that we could still do it. So we had a lot of goodwill and support from everybody, despite the technical challenges. And there were technical challenges. We started off doing it on Zoom, which was not ideal. Let's put it that way. We couldn't monitor what was being recorded. Everybody was recording themselves at their end, which is perfectly okay, but we couldn't actually monitor what was being recorded. So it was a bit seat of the pants. Then we quickly found Clean Feed, which solved pretty much all our problems. But again, even Clean Feed, as good as it is, isn't without its little technical idiosyncrasies. So we're constantly battling with things like somebody might have a massive delay on their line, depending on how good their broadband connection is. There might be glitches and dropouts. So we're always recording local backups. We get everybody to record local backups. So we've always got that option. Should it be a really bad connection? We've had early days of recording from home. I had a power cut. I haven't had a power cut. I haven't had a power cut in decades. I sit down one day to do a recording for Big Finish, and 30 minutes in, complete power cut. So I managed to last. Luckily, it was. This is detail you don't need. I was connecting. I had a 4G dongle for data connection, so I managed to turn that on, plug my computer into it, get a 4G connection to be able to carry on working. But I was Clean Feed, any online business, as we all know, just completely drains your battery so quickly. So I was literally watching my laptop battery decreasing by the second, desperately hoping the power would come back on before my battery ran out, which it did. I was incredibly lucky. So these are all these sorts of completely unexpected and unique technical challenges are being thrown at us pretty much every recording. But I have to say, everybody's been so good and so patient. Even when they're having the problems, I can understand. Nobody got into this business. Actors do not get into this business to sit down at a laptop and learn how to record themselves. They don't. That's not. If you had asked them back in the day whether they would be prepared to do that, they would have said no. That's what I'm not doing this to become to work in IT. But everybody has been so patient and has worked really hard to learn and understand and make it work. And from our point of view, the only thing I would say, yeah, there are all of these problems. They're not insurmountable hurdles, but they make recording days longer. And so for me, really the only sort of additional task is a sort of job that I've always taken a part of my job I've always taken quite seriously anyway, which is to make sure everybody's enjoying themselves. If everybody's enjoying themselves, they do good work. And so the one thing I try to do with these home recordings and online recordings is just I put a bit of extra effort and I put aside a bit more time to make sure that despite all of these technical hurdles and challenges that people are dealing with, they're still enjoying themselves.
Is there anything else you would like to say specifically about Stranded? Is there any stories like behind the scenes or something that you would like to share and spoil?
There are so many behind the scenes stories I'd like to share with everybody, and I just can't. No, not at all. But just hold on to your hats because I know where it's going.
All right, fantastic. How about we get Benji in now? And Benji, I'm going to pull up that clip that we talked about before jumping in. So, and there's the trailer, there's the excerpt. And let me pull it to the time code. And everyone at home, thank you for bearing with me as I also play tech on the fly, because, you know, we're all in this wonderful pandemic world where we do these things, as Ken was just talking about.
You need a theme for these moments, Russell. You need a little jingle.
Yeah. And here we go. And for everybody at home, this is one of our favorite doctors here in America specifically, so enjoy.
Sorry, I'm closed.
I know.
Oh, it's you. Hello, sir. This is an honor.
Yes, I'd like to see your inventory. Now, if you don't mind.
Well, I'm not sure if that's not the usual practice.
I'm not the usual practitioner. Are you refusing me?
Well, it's on your own instructions. You're not supposed to have any influence. You've retired.
I know, but this is strange. I'm sensing an unraveling of time, a disturbance in the ether. Things are not what they should be, or rather, they very soon won't be.
Yeah, all right. I'll make sure we're not interrupted. Well, it may take a while. He left things in quite a mess.
I'm not interested in what he left behind. It's what he took away that could be important.
Oh, of course. Right, inventory. Well, it didn't seem like much. Just a box.
It's amazing how many planetary upheavals begin with something that's just the box. I should know. It's usually my box.
Here's the listing.
Innocuous enough.
Well, that's what I thought.
What's this about a related artifact? Over in your brother's office?
Well, I did say, but he didn't seem that interested.
Of course he wasn't. Always rushing about, distracted by the slightest thing. He's like a puppy with a ball of string sometimes, that one. Or was it a kitten?
Are you sure you should be doing this?
How can we be sure about anything with history hanging by a thread?
Is it? Because of something I've done?
It's far more complicated. Every action of every person on the face of this world is a beat of a butterfly's wings. Who knows which one will cause the hurricanes? Who knows, eh?
Is that what's coming? A hurricane?
Unless there's still some way to turn it into a gentle zephyr. You're right about one thing, Jim. I can't be directly involved, but I must do what I can to warn them. You can open it up again. I have other places to be.
Where are you going?
To take stock. I'll consider my best course. I don't want to go leaping in and cause ripples I can't control.
Not just a hurricane, then. A tsunami, too.
At the very least. And it all begins in Baker Street.
All right. And actually, fortunately, that ended up also highlighting Jamie's work as well. But first, before we get to Jamie's work, let us talk about you and your work as a sound designer, Benji.
Absolute pleasure to be here. It's Stranded is such a fun project to work on in a really different way, because it was sort of quite a technical project, actually. Because of the way, for those that haven't listened to it, the way in which this particular drama is structured, it's all kind of taking place in one house, which has been divided up into flats. And so part of that process, right from the word go, was trying to work out, well, where does everybody live? Because if we can't, it's so easy in sound design to just pop in a door somewhere, door to the right, door to the left. But with this, because of the way in which it all came together, it was a real case of mapping it out. And I was really fortunate. Matt Fitton, one of the writers behind this, I was talking to him and he said, okay, he said, I'll deal with this. And he created some floor plans. And so I had this wonderful sort of visual guide to be able to create this story. It was a really different sort of experience, really.
Yeah, and I don't know if the stereo panning translated in what people heard over the air just now, but that's one of the things that I did want to point out and talk about, because like you do a wonderful job as far as the space and dealing with that and how the characters are moving, and so that we as an audience can understand where they are and relationships that are happening. And it's subtle, but can you just talk about that as far as a designer? Because I don't know that we always do talk about those type of subtleties.
Absolutely. There was a fantastic. You can find it on YouTube somewhere. I think it was something called the Essentials of Mixing or something along the lines of that. But it's this 80s video that was created by this chap who was talking through the different processes of mixing music. And one of the things in which he said is that don't think of it like one speaker to the left and one to the right. Think of it more as painting a picture and where things are in this space. Are things above you? Are things below you? It's kind of how big is something within that space. And what I always try to do within that is I think of the whole picture, and I'm thinking, well, if everything's taking place in the middle, it's not only is it quite difficult for somebody listening to be able to really work out where things are and what they are. It's much easier to have people moving around, make use of the space, because you've got a lot of space in the stereo field to play with. And part of one of the things that I really love is you can really push that to the limits. If you're clever with the way that you do it, you can make people turn around and think, is there something behind me? Is somebody coming in a door over there? Subtle things like that. And I think it is just very important that you, first and foremost, clarity between people. If you've got two people having a conversation, you want to have one person maybe 10% to the right, one person 10% to the left, things like that, just to stop it being a bit of because voices, there are only so many different varieties of voice and spoken word, and people can sound similar if you're not, if you're not careful. So yeah, I think it's quite important just to try and have fun with it, play with it, but also keep it clear and just, sounding spot on, really.
We did, if I can just come in off the back of that, Benji, we did a lot of work on exactly that sort of thing when we were in the early days on Survivors. I think Survivors was a really useful series for us when it started, because we're quite used to a sort of fast pace of storytelling with a lot of the sci-fi that we do. And when we worked on Survivors, we tried to create a series that was very authentic to the original television series, which was a drama was much slower in the 70s. You watch a TV drama from the 70s, it's a much slower pace to the pace of storytelling we're used to now. And so we were trying to recreate, all of a sudden we had all our sci-fi safety nets taken away from us, and we had to create reality on audio at a real pace. And I remember when we had a lot of conversations when we were working on that about the amount of detail you're forced to focus on, because absolutely everything has to happen in a way that we're all used to in life. And if it doesn't, we know, even if we don't know exactly why it isn't working, subconsciously we know it's not working in storytelling terms, and it can take you out of the story. So that
we had a great conversation, didn't we? I remember when we were walking back from the Moat Studios in London, we were going along the Thames, and I remember an example that you actually put forward, Ken, which you were saying, this is for Survivors actually, but it does translate perfectly into the Stranded world. But you were saying, in this world, for those that don't know Survivors, it's a kind of post-apocalyptic thing. There is no electricity, there is nothing. The world is a disease has killed off like 95% of the population.
Something we're all quite familiar with.
Yes, funny enough.
Yeah.
But one thing that Ken said, he said, they've got to boil the water. If they want a cup of coffee, they've got to first boil the water. We've got to hear the water boiling. We've got to give it time to do that before they even consider the fact that they've got to put the coffee in and, pour it out. It's all about, it's like in Stranded, let the kettle boil. And that's a completely different thing, because it's very easy. If you've got a scene that's 1 minute long, you don't want to have the characters click it on and sit and wait around, but you've got to find that balance, haven't you, between keeping it realistic and keeping it, I've just made a cup of tea in 5 seconds, it's the water boils like that. It's just different, isn't it?
That's a brilliant t-shirt slogan for people who work in audio drama. Let the kettle boil.
I just want to jump in and say that something that also the audience may not realize that is very helpful for the sound designers, and Big Finish writers are very good at doing this, is the details. Writing in those little subtle moments. like for example, something from Gallifrey, and this, I'm not sure if this is yours, I can't remember right off, but there's one scene with the Orvics where Lala Ward had to run her hand down the side of a door, and it's just that subtle sound with the just feeling that, so the scratches and the claw marks in the wood, so that was something that could translate for the audience and they could be in that moment. And something, Benji, that you did really well here, and I wanted to ask you about this, is the moment in between when Tom walked across the floor towards the end there. Was that actually something that was paced out that Ken worked on, or was that something you added in that extra moment, as far as, so we had that sense of space as he's traveling, and also the cane and everything? How much was that your work?
Well, I mean, I remember watching when Tom played the curator for the 50th anniversary, and one of the absolute moments for me, the goosebump moment, was the bit where the music starts and Tom very slowly walks out with his stick. He just walks, and he takes a while to walk out. And so, you've got a man with a stick. So first and foremost, he's not going to be whizzing around going back and forth. So you've got to pace it out a little bit. The wonderful thing about that character, the curator, is he has got this sort of, he speaks in short, small sentences. He's very mystical, and there's something about that. So you can afford to kind of pace it out and give it time to breathe. Interesting enough, with the stick, that's one of the hardest things to get right. And I actually had to record myself with a stick walking around to try and because I tried to do it without, and it just didn't sound. Where'd you put the stick between it's very strange. So I had to then afterwards, for whatever surface he was walking on, I had to replace the individual footsteps and add in the stick sound. So it's a kind of, like you were really saying, it's a details thing. I mean, one detail I will say, I was thinking when you were describing that, one thing that I think is really underrated in sound design is use of actual specific types of clothing. All of my characters, when I'm making things, they all actually have different types of sounds for when they're moving. So underneath the footprints, the footsteps, I've got fur coats, I've got leather jackets, I've got different types of blazers and things like that, so that everybody just sounds a little bit different. I mean, it's when Ken mentioned Survivors, I think in the third box set of Survivors, there was a character in there who was a real thug. He was a horrible guy, sort of back at sort of 1970s kind of leather jacket punk sort of character. And so for that, with him, I've got this great old leather jacket that I used to wear when I was about 16. And it's great because it's full of loads of jangly things that make loads of noise. But with that was one of my favorite things that I've ever done sound-wise, because whenever, not only would you could do a lot of movements, but if you wanted to be intimidating with that character, because he gets in close and is really nasty to people, you crunch the leather just ever so slightly, really feels it's like leathery skin. It really feels, it gets under you. It gives you real shivers. And so making use of the details, I think that's what it's very easy to just call it in the box terms, in terms of music writing. To do things in the box, just sound effects that you bought from a library is great. Anybody can do it. But if you want to add extra texture to work, just add little bits and bobs in. Little things. Walk around with a portable recorder makes such a difference to when you're crafting things.
Yeah, sound design to directing to writing. So that specificity is what really puts it over and sells it. Benji, thank you. I want to make sure we have some time for Jamie here. Jamie, I do want to play the music for you that we actually opened with, but this is a theme that Jamie composed for the production of Doctor Who Stranded. And let me share this so that everybody is able to hear it. Hold on, sorry. Again, juggling. And for real this time.
Doctor Who, the 8th Doctor Adventure.
There we go. Brilliant. Jamie.
Hi.
Hi.
Been ages since I listened to that.
Yeah. Can you speak to your work as a composer for us?
I certainly can. Yeah. Well, that track particular, like you said, it's got actually it's got a few themes in it. As you can hear, it's got the like the London sort of theme, and then it goes into what I call the DC theme, Doom Coalition theme, which is our bunch of heroes, Helen, Liv, and the Doctor, and it's their theme that's always their touching moments. Do you know what I mean? And then from that we also have a couple of others, including one that pays homage a little bit to Murray's work in the 50th Adventure, because I noticed the synth he was using, and I tracked down, inquired to find out what the synth was, just to give it a little bit of a link. It's not, you don't want to plagiarise or anything, but just to give it a bit of a link back for the curator to the 50th anniversary. So that's why that synth's in there.
And Jamie, you said Murray. Can you just clarify at home, because not everybody knows who you're talking
Murray
about?
Gold, yeah, Murray Gold, who obviously did the music before and did the 50th anniversary. When the guys did that, I believe they worked in the studio with sound recordist Jake Jackson. I think they worked out some synths, and I'm sure if you look online you'll get the proper story, but there was a particular, I think it was the CS80. Benji will probably laugh. Oh, I know that one.
Used for the 1980s Doctor Who.
Yeah. So it just gives it that, that little, because we've got this mysterious guy, the curator. Who is he? And I don't know. Ken knows. He's smiling. Looks it. But yeah. But the thing is that it's also very calming at first, because this season, when we was at the end of, it was Ravenous, wasn't it? Before, was it Ravenous before? Yeah, it was Ravenous. I get confused now. Ravenous, Time War, we was crashing down, wasn't we, towards the end? And I'm thinking, where's this going? And then I think I spoke with you, Benji, and you said, I think they're gonna strand him. And this is before Stranded was even, and it's great because, like you've already said, it's gone of all the big explosions, all the space scenes. We're on planet Earth and we're locked down, and so the music, it's nice to have the music sort of relax, and we're getting a chance now to really learn the characters more, Liv and Helen in particular, and their side of things, and the people they're meeting as well, and so the music needs to really, I suppose, reflect that, and not be all synthetic and futuristic, but more contemporary.
Jamie, can you talk about the emotion and what you have to do as a composer to help fill out the scene, not so it's detracting, but so it lends to and lifts what Ken and Benji and everybody else is working on?
Well, the first thing I do is I tend to go through and listen and do what I call a music plot. But when I'm doing the music plot, I'm sort of playing little ideas, thinking, and I sort of make note on the timeline. We can put markers in the DOW, the workstations we use. I use Logic Pro X, if anyone knows their music. Sometimes I could be there and I think, actually, when I come to the writing stage, actually, that music's now no longer needed because the music previously is doing enough. And if you overfill scenes with music, I find it can be too distracting, and I think you need to let the actors breathe, you need to let the story breathe, you need to let Benji's sound design breathe, and that's why I try not to. It's good because I've been a sound designer myself, and we've done it where you've done so much sound design work and then you put music over the top of it and completely wipe out all the sound design work. So for keeping music nice and gentle and knowing when it's right, you got to have that gut feeling if it's going to work or not. If it's not going to work, then it probably isn't going to work. And there's been a couple of times when I've put something in, maybe, and Ken said, I don't think that works. Or Helen may have said, on time slip, when we've worked on time slip. And you think, right, that's what the problem was. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And so just remove that music, doesn't need it. Or perhaps there's another scene where there's no music there at the moment, and you're thinking, does it need it? Does it not need it? And then one of these guys might come along and say, actually, I think you need something there. It's good to have the director then think, actually, I do think it needs music there. So for emotion, like you say, emotion-driven music, it helps. I've always seen music as a character within a film, or audio drama, or stage play. It's a character. It's something to help assist the story, but to never overtake, only in specific points, and hopefully it works. So
another thing that actually from the sample we heard with Benji's scene at the end, I just want to point out, because I know Ken and Scott, etc., Helen, I'm sure you do this as well. We make sure that there is around 7 seconds or more at times to have those transition moments, so a composer has that moment to shine in between scenes, especially for like passage of time, things like that. Can you talk about that, or Ken or anybody jump in and talk about that?
When I've had it a lot where, like, for instance, Benji, I think you tend to send through with a couple of seconds spare each side of a scene, and then I'll tend to slide around the scene changes based on the music. But there might be occasions when, for instance, I've said to Benji, haven't I, where you've got some music in the background on a radio or something, from this point to that point, could you start to turn it down so we can bring in the orchestra music so it's not clashing? And there might be another situation where something's said, and I've got my own little nicknames for certain music cues. Like a timp bomb, I call it a timpani bomb. You know, when the low timpani starts and you've got something ominous darks coming in. That's why. Could you just? I say to Benji, could you just shift the dial, everything along, and give me a second there so that can come in, so we can emphasise on what they're about to say. Like, my God, the place is going to blow up. Boom, yeah. You know. So so like that. It's good to work with the sound designs on that. Because it's also, we're not dealing with, obviously I've dealt with film and TV stuff. We're not like picture locked, so we can still move stuff around and work together.
I think the good thing as well, we've all worked with each other for years now, haven't we? I mean,
definitely.
my first director was Ken, and when I was doing sound design, I think you were my second musical composer for that one as well. So we've been doing this years, so it's nice that we all know kind of how each other works. So I think that's really helpful.
Picking up on what I said earlier about when you know something's not working in the scene, you can't put I've had notes like with you, Ken, even on the sound design as well as music, and if it's not working, something's not right with this scene, and then when you send the notes back, I won't say anything, the notes, it will actually have what it is. Oh, that's what it is, and that fixes it. And it's good when that happens, because I tend to find we're on the same path then. Something else I don't tend to do is I've got the script, but I tend to like to think, right, I'm the listener. The listener's not going to have the script in front of them. Right. So I try to do it as much as possible without the script, just to see where we're going. It's the only time I ever use it is probably if I'm working out like an arc, bit of music that's going to arc later on, or if I'm a little bit unsure of the emotion to be given, whether it's dark or happy. Yeah, it between scriptwriters, directors, and sound designers, the music side is still quite communicative with everyone.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's that's what I think is. I find it's one of the reasons I enjoy this job so much is the absolutely collaborative nature of it, and the fact that there's never something being picture locked is a really good analogy I've not thought of before. It's never that we're sort of completing a task and then handing it on to the next person. It's sort of all of these things in the Venn diagram of audio production. All of these things overlap somewhere, and it's always a case of sort of two steps forward, one step back as you sort of gently, gradually make your way towards the finish line.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. And and with Helen as well. I think with Time Slip, when we was working on that, we was changing things right to the last, to mastering. I think it was something you was discussing earlier, like with John Dorney, and I think I nicknamed it Dornified. We needed to Dornify this, because there was one particular line that needed doing just one small character, and it needed to be a male line, didn't it? And let's Dornify it.
Yeah.
And the next minute, John sent through this thing. So
that's right. Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on the end of our session, gang, and I just wanted to see if there are any closing remarks that you wanted to make before we do wrap things up.
Can I just make one observation? It was something Benji said when he was speaking about painting a picture. And that's one of the things I've always felt quite strongly about. Despite the fact we work in audio, what we are doing is painting pictures. It's creating images in the mind of a listener. So despite the fact that we're in the business of audio drama production, actually my entire approach to this job and the way I communicate with most other people when I'm working is in an almost entirely visual way. You've got to. Sorry, go on, Jamie.
Benji has a very hard job at the moment with Stranded, because I always find I struggle with stuff that's not set futuristic. Every house can sound the same, so you tend to have to put like a ticking clock or something. I don't know if Benji...
I'm the opposite. I actually prefer real world stuff to science fiction stuff.
Whereas science fiction, you can add like different drones in the background, can't you? But
I don't know. I love creating a scene. Is there traffic? Is there traffic outside? Are they on the flight path?
Yeah.
You know,
we've been fortunate enough to work on some very different styles of production over the years, I would agree. I think I've always felt sci-fi is great. Don't get me wrong; it's a ton of fun, but you can get away with so much more because there's no benchmark for sci-fi. Who can tell you that sound effect is inappropriate? But when you're creating the real world, I love it because it's a bit like working in theatre. There's real craft skill in recreating the real world on audio.
Just when
it
you
should
said about
be simple, but it's really hard.
Yeah, when you said about theatre, just picking up on something what you asked about the music earlier. I don't like to overdo the music within the audio dramas, but one thing that I do find is an art to do is the scene passage of times and signals between the scenes. You don't want them all to be sounding repetitive, do you? And sometimes they might not be needed, and then I won't put it in. And I think hopefully we tend to be on agreement. No, yep, you're fine. That go from that scene to that scene, and it works well. You know.
Yeah, it's amazing the number of times you don't need a scene transition.
Yeah, exactly. Scene transitions. Yeah.
Right.
I would say, just to follow on from what Ken said, that when I describe what I do to people who don't know the world of audio drama, I always describe it as audio cinema. That's what we
audio movie.
It's a movie in your head.
It is hard.
Yeah, I was going to say that's something. Audio dramas have never gone away in the UK, whereas here stateside, like that fell off for a while, and there's been times where it's been prevalent, and then now it's coming back because of podcasts again. But it's just interesting because like the world that you live in, that cinematic quality has just evolved and is just as realistic and rich as anything you would see in the cinema. And I don't know that people always realize that here stateside, because they think of audio drama in a lot of cases where it's the 30s or 40s, and they're thinking about the live productions versus like where we're at now in the cinematic worlds that are being created, because it's evolved quite a bit.
I still think the origin of that, though, I think one of the things that I loved is Gunsmoke. Great US. That Gunsmoke is great. That, for me, listening to that, because I love anything from the past, listening to that, we're not far off. They weren't far off what we're doing now. And the only difference, I think, is in quality of equipment and recordings, really, and having computers helps. But, you know, that was pioneering stuff, and you can listen to a lot of it now, You can find it all over the place. You can listen to it a lot now, and it still stands up. It's really good stuff out there.
Definitely.
Well, I thank you all. And also, I want to say congratulations, because I didn't say that earlier. So congratulations to each of you at first getting a nomination, and then for the three of you who won. So congratulations.
And to you as well, Russell. To you as well.
Yeah.
And thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad we finally have had this chance to actually meet.
Definitely.
Right.
Always a pleasure to be asked. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. All right. And I'm going to end. Kill the live stream. Actually, I need David to do that. Oh. And in the interim, if you guys do just want to, because we're still live at the moment as I text him.
Quick, everybody, start swearing.
Yeah. He's in the local inn. Running down the road now. I'm coming.